YouTube frogs, welcome back to another complete guide, this time covering our favorite Kitsune Shrine Maiden, Yae Miko. It's been a long time coming since her first appearance way back in the 1.5 livestream with Zhongli. Now she's finally here in 2.5 and time to take a look at how she works. We'll be breaking down her talents and covering how she plays, potential weapon choices, constellations, artifact choices, team comps, and showcasing her in the abyss. If you're new here, first off, welcome to the channel and appreciate you dropping by. I also stream most nights on Twitch. Feel free to check out my chaotically chill community over there. Link in the description. Alright, let's begin. Here's what to expect for base investment from My Yae Miko. Level 80 out of 80, Constellation 0 with level 6 talents across the board. I'll be running a mixture of 2-piece Thundering Fury and 2-piece attack percent from either Gladiators or Shimanawas. I've also prepared a 4-piece Thunderzuzu set as well, but this is difficult to achieve a 4-piece set that I don't expect you to have, but I will end up using this for when I unlock my Constellation 6. And worry not, I'll be covering multiple possible artifacts that she can run. For her main stats, I'll be running a standard attack-based DPS artifacts with an attack timepiece, lateral goblet, and crit rate or crit damage mask. Multiple artifact layouts will be explained in the artifact section. Current artifact quality with these artifacts provide me plus 70 crit rate and plus 90 crit damage. This makes my crit build quality 1.63. I also opted for as many pieces with solid energy recharge subset as possible for a plus 36%. I'd consider these artifacts relatively high quality, so don't fret if you aren't near these numbers. With the Wit Sit at level 80, stat layout looks like this. And also to show the flower and feather because I didn't show them. So, how does she work? You may have seen that her burst is any energy cost, just like Raiden Shogun, and on a very long 22-second cooldown. Now, without Constellations, this would be pretty inconvenient to build around without an energy recharge timepiece and or energy recharge based weapon. We also have her signature Kagura's Verity, which is purely damage based with no recharge and boosts her elemental skill. And that's where we should target. Put simply, Yae Miko is a consistent elemental skill, a DPSer with extra burst DPS when available. So I would recommend prioritizing not her elemental burst uptime, but rather the raw damage from her elemental skill. Let's take a look at her normal charge attack first. Now this won't be used that much unless you are a diehard Yae Miko fan and or want to make her a main DPS. She does have some incredible animation design though, which actually serves a practical purpose beyond being aesthetically pleasing. Her charge attack actually has two procs, one at the beginning and one at the end, kind of noticeable through sound cues. On enemies with larger hitboxes, her charge attack will actually hit twice. For 2 times this multiplier damage for 400% at level 6 instead of 200%. This animation is long, but can be animation cancelled pretty effectively through both jump and dash. However, as with all Catalyst users, their charge attack is 50 stamina, meaning this rotation can only be used 3 to 4 times, on the lower end of 3 if dash cancelling. Moving on to the elemental skill. This is the core of her kit. This talent places up to 3 totems on the ground, with more totems connected makes them all stronger. Level 1 to 3 at Constellation 0, and level 2 to 4 at Constellation 2. You can notice each totem's level by the number of rings, and also their connections are visually clear. Alright, some things to note when placing totems that are not described in the talent description. She always places the totem where she glides to, not to where she was. Placing a totem without holding a directional key, for example standing still, causes her to move backwards. Holding a directional key causes her to glide in that direction. Placing a totem right on top of an existing one, which is harder to do than you think, will replace it. The range between each totem is pretty large, well within the gliding range of spamming triple totem in a triangle formation, which is recommended and optimal. However, spamming triple totem in a straight line is too long. The ones on the end of the line will not connect. Totems also seem to be indestructible, unlike geoconstructs, so you don't have to worry about them suddenly being destroyed and needing replacement like Albedo's elevator. And finally, in co-op, only 3 can exist, even if 4 Yae Mikos are in the party. Yae's burst will also consume 3 totems even if someone else placed them. Alright, more details on the actual elemental skill. Each charge has a cooldown of 4 seconds with a 14-second duration. Triple Totem has a combined cooldown of 12 seconds with 14-second duration, which is permanent uptime. A single totem procs once every 3 seconds and generates 1 particle. 3 totems proc 3 times every 3 seconds, but still only generate 1 particle. So the full skill duration here procs roughly 15 times and generates 5 particles. 15 of these procs deals about 2000% multiplier in 14 to 15 seconds at level 6 talent and at a level 3 totem. With 0 requirement on energy and infinite uptime, these totems are Yae's most consistent source of DPS and why I recommend prioritizing it over her other talents. Her Ascension 4 passive talent also slightly boosts her totem damage based on her elemental mastery. 100 elemental mastery equates to a 15% damage boost. This is calculated in the same category as elemental damage bonus. I would recommend viewing this bonus as something extra, not the main thing to build around. Moving on to her gorgeously captivating elemental burst. This ability is straightforward. Activating deals an initial strike of AoE electro damage, counted as skill damage here, and then sacrifices all nearby totems on the field. Only 3 totems can exist even in co-op, so we can't test ridiculous interactions. For each totem sacrificed, her burst summons additional Tenko Thunderbolts that also deal AoE electro damage. This ability is on a very long 22-second cooldown, as we mentioned, with a 90 energy cost. So unless you are Constellation 1, restoring 24 flat energy, this ability will generally rotate every 30 seconds or so. So in my opinion, I would view it as extra DPS when available and primarily focus on her totem DPS. Still though, with perfect uptime, every 22 seconds her burst would deal 1,765% multiplier, combining 3 Thunderbolts and 1 skill damage. In this same 22-second time period, her elemental skill with perfect uptime would deal about 3,000% damage. Remember, 15 procs over 15 seconds means about 24 procs in 22 seconds. So, if rotated every 30 seconds due to energy uptime, her totems actually exceed 4,000% damage. With this in mind, her totems are generally responsible for 60 to 70% of her consistent DPS output, and her burst is associated with 30 to 40% of her nuke DPS. So now you probably see that which talents to prioritize. Additionally, her Ascension 1 passive talent continues to maintain her totem uptime. When her burst is activated, every totem sacrifice has their cooldown reset. So 3 totem sacrifice means all 3 are completely refunded so Yae can place them again. Regarding talent priority, elemental skill priority first, then elemental burst, and then normal attack. In my opinion, elemental skill and burst deserve as much investment as needed. I would personally invest skill and burst to a level 8 and beyond. Okay, quick breather.
3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3.
Done. Time to dive into how she plays, which honestly is pretty cookie cutter. For most players running Yae's sub DPS with the occasional burst nuke, triple totem into burst when available, into triple totem to reset. Running this type of rotation usually means that you have Raiden Shogun with Yae in party. Since Yae will likely be off-field more than on-field, Raiden will take up more on-field time with her burst uptime. Really important mechanic to note about Yae's kit. None of its snapshots. Her elemental skill and elemental burst are dynamic damage types and don't snapshot any buffs from weapon or from Bennett. This means that she can freely swap on-field or off-field whenever to replace her totems and cast her burst. Now, for my gamers who don't have Raiden or just want Yae on-field more because you like her animations, on top of triple totem, you'll likely wish to weave in a combo of her normals and charge attack. But because her charge attack is so stamina expensive, you can't spam it too much. Larger enemies should be prioritized for her charge attack as it strikes twice. And no matter which DPS style you end up running on your Yae, remember that because she has a very high energy cost burst, depending on your team comp, burst uptime may be a little lacking. That's perfectly fine. Elemental burst whenever available and when team buffs are ready. Otherwise, rely on her elemental skill for most of her consistent DPS off-field or on-field. Now, because her elemental skill is the core of her kit and is extremely low maintenance, Tenacity, a sub-DPS Yae Miko playstyle, also exists. This cuts a little bit of her personal damage, from 50% Electro and 18% attack from 2 Thundering and 2 attack from Gladiator Shimenawa's, to 20% from 4 Tenacity, but that 20% is for the entire team. By the same reasoning, 4 Noblesse also exists, but that one suffers heavily due to a 90 energy cost gated burst. So if you were to run a slightly support-based Yae Miko, Tenacity is much more autopilot. And for my overload gamers out there, EM Yae Miko taking advantage of her Ascension 4 passive is also another off-meta build if you want to experiment with explosive Yae. In most situations, she will be the one activating the elemental reaction, so EM stacking is possible. At the end of the day though, because Yae Miko's main kit DPS is not locked to her energy, she has access to more flexible options than what may seem at first glance. No matter what you choose, most importantly, have fun. Alright, so what weapons to prioritize for Yae Miko? With flexible playstyle options, she honestly has a wide array of catalysts that fit the bill. Most will likely be running strict DPS-based catalysts for maximum raw damage increase to her elemental skill and burst damage. Additional available options for main DPS Yae gamers who will be weaving a bit of auto and charge attacks in, as well as more supportive options to accommodate more supportive builds. So firstly, running through proper weapon comparisons for selective DPS-based catalysts to give you guys an expectation of what unbuffed damage to expect with base investment. We'll be going through quick demos of her usual rotation, triple totem into burst into triple totem. I'll be using Zhongli's shield as well as a protective measure against the Geovishat, who is going to be our lovely HP sponge for this video. Also Kokomi for certain weapons that require reactions. The damage will obviously be slightly inflated due to his shield providing resistance tread. Weapon comparisons for damage will be rotated around 20-second intervals. This will be a combo estimate of 20 single target activations of her totems, along with a 3 totem burst damage. Let's begin. The weapons I have selected to demonstrate: the 3-star R5 Emerald Orb and the R5 Magic Guide. These are base budget weapons specifically used for electrocharge teams only, since the passive on both of these weapons are incredibly easy to maintain 100% uptime. Alright, 4-star Mappa Mare. This is the budget craftable option like the 3-star weapons, with the passive easy to maintain. Four-star Blacklift. This is the standard crit damage option available through Star Glitter. Four-star Solar Pearl. This is the Battle Pass crit rate option with a slightly synergistic passive, but though it needs a little bit more on-field time to maintain the 6-second passive for the elemental skill and burst buff. Now, before we get into Witsith of all forms and Dodoko Tails for the Charger Deck gamers, let's check off the 5-star weapons. Memory of Dust. This is the attack percent stat stick. Requires on-field time for base stacks. Shielding doesn't work for off-field, so assume the second part of the passive is not used by her. The damage here that you see is with the shield. You can essentially reduce it by about 8% from the damage numbers that you'll see to shave off the additional 20% attack gained. Skyward Atlas, standard attack percent static as well, with an extra elemental damage bonus. This passive, don't really worry about it. Ospreyer at R180. This is the crit rate stat stick for the most part, and usually this passive will only be able to get 1 to 2 of the stacks before needing to swap out. Finally, Kangra's Verity. This is a signature weapon with a massive boost to totem damage. At 3 stacks, it also grants 12% all elemental damage bonus at R1. Now here's a separate chart for all 4 Witsith versions. The base version with 0 buff, and then 1 for each attack percent, elemental damage bonus, and the elemental mastery. All of these versions work excellently. Elemental mastery version only benefits the totems though, so you'll see that the burst damage for this style is going to be the same as the base. Even with no buff, it still provides solid crit damage to combine with her crit rate ascendant stat. And for my charge attack gamers, 4-star Dodoko Tails at R590. This is a free event attack stat stick if you play it during the Golden Archipelago event. Passive is decent to maintain if you run the charge attack playstyle. Normal attack increases charge attack by 32% for 6 seconds, and then using the charge attack has you 16% attack for 6 seconds. Okay, so generally all these weapons demonstrated held their ground. The 3-star weapons have specific synergies with certain compositions and can deal decent damage, very similar to the Mappa Mirror's damage output. The crit-based weapons Solar Pearl and Blacklift performed as expected, pretty average, slightly better than the base F2P options. And then you can't go wrong with the 5-star options either. Attack-based Catalysts, Memory of Dust, and Skyward Atlas, when equalized, are basically neck and neck. Memory of Dust looks stronger here, but this is with the shielded double buff. Lost Prayer is also neck and neck, mainly since its passive cannot practically stack super high without swapping out for rotations. But still, this weapon is generally easy to build around because of its massive crit rate stat stick, which carries its value. Then of course, Kagura's Verity. This maximizes the elemental skill totem damage by a solid 20% over the other 5-star options, and 40 to 50% over the 4-star and 3-star options. Burst damage is only minorly stronger by about 5%. Considering that the totems account for 60 to 70% of her practical damage, this makes Kagura's Verity, even at R1, on average 15% stronger than its counterparts. The 4-star option that definitely packs the strongest punch, even considering its volatility, is Witsith. 33% of the time, which is usually timed with her burst, Witsith can buff beyond Kagura's Verity R1 power by 15%. This is with the attack percent and the elemental damage buff. The downtime for the 20 seconds is equivalent to about an average 4-star weapon. So then the average value of this weapon is slightly weaker than Kagura's overall, but I would say on average or slightly stronger than the other 5-star options. If you don't have R5 yet of the Witsith, I would say that R3 is more than enough. Alright, then we have Dodoko Tails at R590, which does have slightly inflated numbers due to being level 90, which is about 7% stronger than level 80. I would say this performs on equal footing with the Solar Pearl or Blacklift, and is more beneficial if you're going to run main DPS Yae for the 32% charge attack bonus. And finally, our last semi-DPS catalyst coming out in an upcoming 2.5 event, Oathsworn Eye. This is a raw attack-based catalyst which will likely perform on the same plane as Dodoko Tails, Solar Pearl, and Blacklift, and has the additional benefit of up to 48% energy recharge increase after using elemental skill at R5. So this is also an option and will definitely assist with her burst uptime. I would consider this weapon for newer players that aren't able to get their hands on a high refinement 3+ Witsith or better. So this leads to my final personal recommendations. Obviously, Kagura's number 1. And then any 5-star is fine. After that, Witsith R3 to R5. And then Solar Pearl to build easier, or the upcoming R5 Oathsworn because it's essentially a free weapon. And then for main DPS on-field Yae mains, we have Dodoko Tails and Lost Prayer, which see a little bit more value than usual. Not done yet. Finally, some weapon options for supportive Yae. This is, for example, builds that are committed to 4-piece Tenacity or 4-piece Noblesse. These choices would mostly be relying on her 100% uptime totems as supportive DPS for the on-field carry. The standard Thrilling Tales of Dragon Slayer, TTDS, the staple generic attack buffing catalyst for the immediate next party member you swap to. This is possible for synergies with Raiden Shogun, for example, or any main DPS paired with Yae. And I have not crafted it yet because I want to save the mask, the Hakushin Ring. And I know that in the future, I believe that there was a patch note saying that we can use the mask and still have it in our inventory, but that will be done at a later date. So Hakushin Ring, this is the electrocharge oriented supportive weapon. Provides a little bit of extra recharge as well for additional burst DPS, and also provides that 10 to 20% elemental damage bonus for electro and related electro element reactions for 6 seconds. Hakushin Ring is mostly electrocharge oriented, but can also work for overload if you would like to try that out. Favonius Codex, this is the staple team utility weapon that requires a little more on-field time for the orbs to actually generate from the passive, because they don't generate off-field. Crit rate for the passive should be easy, given her crit rate ascension stat and running a crit rate mask. And then, Prototype Amber. I honestly can't believe I'm saying this, but if you want to make Yae a healer, I bid thee good luck, because it is elemental burst based, and her burst is 90 cost. Power to you, soldier, if you're running Prototype Amber Yae. And I believe that should cover basically all current options, DPS and supportive Yae weapons that are available. On to Yae Miko's artifacts. I've already laid the foundation for DPS and supportive builds in the weapon, so that's what we'll cover here. Raw DPS builds. Since Yae Miko is primarily an elemental skilled damage dealer, and there's no dedicated 4-piece set that has perfect synergy currently, she falls into the same category as Xiao. Substats matter the most. Between 4-piece Thunder Soother, which theoretically is her best, and many 2-piece options, for example like 2 Thundering Fury and 2 Gladiator, they're all within a 5% DPS margin. So honestly, choose the set of 2-piece that provides the best ratio of attack, crit rate, crit damage, with a slight bit of energy recharge and extra elemental mastery if possible. And depending on the weapon that you go, you might need to prioritize different stats. As an example, running Kagura's Verity is an immense crit damage stat stick, so your build, even with an attack timepiece, might be lacking in the attack department. Mine is. If your weapon provides a bunch of a damage stat, for example like crit damage or attack percent, then try to optimize your artifacts around the stats that you lack. So then for DPS, we have 4-piece Thunder Soother, and then for the 2-piece, we have Thundering Fury for electro damage, Gladiator or Shimenawa's for standard attack percent, Wanderer's Troop for the 80 elemental mastery for totem damage, 2-piece Noblesse for burst damage, and 2-piece Emblem for the raw recharge. Possible additional other 4-piece DPS builds. 4-piece Emblem. This provides 0 gain to her totems, which are 60 to 70% of her damage. Keep that in mind. It's only buffs to 30 to 40%, which is why I generally don't recommend 4-piece Emblem. 4-piece Wanderer's Troop. These are charge attack memes. That's about it. 4-piece Thunder Soother essentially is the same stack gain. You'll notice that 4-piece Wanderer's Troop is 80 elemental mastery and 35% charge attack damage. 4-piece Thunder Soother is 35% additional damage to electro-afflicted enemies, which essentially is the same category of stat gain, just dependent on electro-affliction. You can see that even with 4-piece Thunder Soother being the closest, nothing is completely synergistic with her kit and has 100% uptime. 4-piece Thunder Soother is practically her best, as she is a pure electro damage dealer and optimizes on compositions that are electro or electrocharge based. And I know, you guys may be thinking, well, Thunder Soother doesn't work on certain things. Well, yeah, Yae doesn't do any damage to Electro Slimes or the Thunder Manifestation, which is the Electro Bird, anyway, so that negative of this artifact set does not really apply to her. The other element slimes, Yae will punch through anyway without the buff. Before the main stats, let's cover other potential builds. If you'd like to experiment with Elemental Mastery Yae, then 4-piece Thundering Fury for the 40% reaction damage boost. And then there's Supportive Yae. In this case, there are 2 sets. 4-piece Tenacity I would recommend over 4-piece Noblesse. Reason is because Noblesse's uptime, given her burst cost of 90, is expensive. 4-piece Tenacity just requires your elemental skill to keep proccing, which has 100% uptime. Okay, now onto main stats for these builds. DPS Yae. For the whole kit, generic DPS. Attack Timepiece, Electro Goblet, Crit Damage Mask. Reaction and Totem only DPS. EM Timepiece, Electro Goblet, Crit Damage Mask. Pure Elemental Mastery Yae. This is triple Elemental Mastery, EM for maximum overload or electrocharge damage. Supportive Tenacity Yae. Attack or energy recharge timepiece depending on if you want to maximize her totem damage or go for more rotational burst. Electro Goblet, Crit Damage Mask. And Supportive Noblesse Yae. Prioritize ER timepiece because you just want to get that burst off. Electro Goblet and Crit Damage Mask. For DPS Yae's energy recharge threshold, I would say aim for 120% and then rely on double Electro. It's not going to be perfect uptime, and for the most part, you don't really need her burst to be perfect uptime, so grab as much ER that you feel is the most comfortable for your team comp. In my opinion, it's much more important to maximize her totem's damage, since it's 100% uptime, 0 requirement, and about 2/3 of her practical damage output. Alright, so here's what my current Yae stats look like with a crit rate mask. Running the Kagura's Verity weapon at R1. And then with a crit damage mask. So as you can see, the crit ratio is generally okay, but my attack percent is lacking a little bit. I'm pretty satisfied with this recharge at 136%. If I wanted more attack percent, I'd probably be running Bennett on the team comp. Time for Constellations. And I know one of the most popular questions surrounding her Constellations is C2 worth? We'll cover it. Constellation 1. 8 flat energy is returned per Tenko Thunderbolt activated. A Tenko Thunderbolt, which is off of her burst, only activates if a totem is sacrificed. You can see it in this text box here. So that means there's only up to 3 Tenko Thunderbolts summoned per burst. This then turns her burst from a 90 cost to a 66 cost. This allows her to rotate that extra DPS from her burst much easier. You can view this as a essentially 30% energy reduction for her burst. C2. Seisho Sakura, or her totems from elemental skill, gain a level, turning their power from level 1 to 3 to level 2 to 4. Attack range also increases by 60%, turning them into ranged artillery. The strength of this constellation at all talent levels is plus 25% totem damage. You can see at level 6 here, from 132% to 166% is a 33% gain, which is about 25% from level 3 to level 4. This is a very strong boost considering that her totems are most of her kit's damage. So C1 and C2 combined are pretty dang strong. Now whether this is worth for you, I guess you can see for yourself and what you're comparing with. You all have different situations like pulling for Kagura's Verity or saving for Raiden Shogun in the second half patch, whatever it is. This should provide a good idea of C2's value, including C1, because that's what C2 means, right? Compared to your other options. Constellation 3, plus 3 levels to her totem. This is a plus 20% multiplier damage. This is the same thing for every single C3, C5. Constellation 4, 100% uptime plus 20% electro damage bonus, because your totems are always going to be having Lightning Strike and their uptime is 100%. This benefits the most for mono electro team comps that can all benefit from this 20% electro damage bonus, or at least double electro comps. C5, plus 3 burst levels, which is a plus 20% multiplier, same thing as C3. Constellation 6, the ignore defense returns once again. Does this look familiar to Raiden C2? I made a Raiden Shogun Constellation comparison vid in the past, and I'll make one for Yae too. You can expect a 50% totem damage increase from the 60% ignore defense from C6, not affected by diminishing returns. So, besides C1 that targets Yae's energy problem, which is very nice, rest of our constellations are mostly totem buffs and general buffs. With Constellation 6 in total, combined from C2, C3, C4, and C6, I would expect that her totems from Seisho Sakura deal a plus 100% or essentially double damage increase. I'm pretty excited for that once I activate her constellation sometime later after this guide publishes. Team comps. How would one build around Yae Miko? We know primarily that her damage revolves around her elemental skill and, if applicable, her burst when available. As a 100% pure Electro DPS, since she's a Catalyst user, Mono Electro and Electro Charge are two of the main pillars of Electro team building. Particularly for Yae Miko, I would say that there are 2 to 3 super synergistic units that, in my opinion, if you have just one of them, you can flesh out a nice comp for her. Disclaimer though, those 3 units are all 5-star. Number 1, Kokomi. So, pairing Yae Miko and Kokomi unlocks a very safe and consistent Electro Charge comp. Notes about this duo. Yae Miko provides 100% uptime totem electro application. Kokomi provides highly consistent AoE Hydra application from her jellyfish, as well as a comfortable healing in one unit. Attach on a second electro like C6 Fischl, or Beidou for AoE, or Raiden, etc. for Electro Resonance Battery, and Nemo Viridescent as the 4th slot for grouping, buffing, or debuffing. With just Yae Miko plus Kokomi, you technically already have the composition, so anything else just provides either more damage, more energy, or crowd control. Example, Electro Charge team comp. Yae Miko plus Kokomi plus C6 Fischl plus Sucrose. Yae and Kokomi are the on-field DPS Catalyst users, Fischl C6 as its sub-DPS turret, and then Sucrose for Viridescent Venerer Shred, Elemental Mastery Transfer, and a Elemental Damage bonus buff if you have C6. Number 2, Raiden Shogun. Pairing Yae Miko plus Raiden Shogun unlocks a nasty duo. Notes about this duo. Double Electro Resonance as long as you have a reactor in the last 2 slots, i.e. Pyro, Hydro, or Cryo. Raiden mitigates the energy problem that Yae Miko has for burst uptime. Raiden's rotation also fits Yae Miko's rotation, becoming a dance of 2 Electro Queens. And then both have 100% uptime persistent elemental skills, which continuously generate Electro Orbs. From here, you can opt for multiple support options in the last 2 slots. Anemo again for Viridescent Venerer, Bennett for the raw damage buff, C6 Sara for attack buff and electro crit damage buff, Hydro for electro charge, etc. Example, Mono Electro team. Yae plus Raiden plus C6 Sara plus either Jean for healing Anemo or Sanyu for healing Anemo. Number 3, Kazuha. So, pairing Yae Miko plus Kazuha unlocks her strongest nuke comp. I would say this duo for budget players may be a little risky because without Kokomi, comps around Kazuha have little survivability. This duo is much more glass cannon and less forgiving on mistakes, but provides Yae Miko access to her strongest damage output. Notes about this duo. Kazuha has access to highly consistent swirl and crowd control to provide element buff, viridescent debuff, and grouping, while Yae Miko is not on the field. Primarily used to complete mono electro team comps that sacrifice healing to maximize pure electro DPS. So from here you can complete the glass cannon comp with any set of electro characters, most likely including C6 Sara for attack and electro crit damage buff. And though I mentioned Mono Electro, you can still add safety and survivability to this comp with Kokomi, but I've already mentioned Kokomi's duo strength in number 1. Alright, damage per screenshot composition, Yae Miko, Kazuha, C6 Sara, and Bennett. Mono Electro Glass Cannon, no healing, Yae Miko, Kazuha, C6 Sara, and Raiden Shogun. And as we mentioned, the safety Electro Charge composition, Yae Miko, Kazuha, Kokomi, +1, typically double Electro. Now if you're a newer player and don't have these 5-star characters, but want to play somewhat meta, then this is the F2P friendly composition that I recommend. Yae Miko plus Xingqiu plus Fischl plus Sucrose. This is just like the Sucrose Taser composition involving Sucrose, Fischl, Beidou, Xingqiu, except either Fischl or Beidou can be swapped out for Yae Miko depending on what you need. Keep Beidou in for more AoE and keep Fischl in for more single target. Now there is no dedicated healer in this composition except for Xingqiu's Rain Swords, so you have to be mindful of proper dodging technique. I also demonstrate this composition in the current Abyss so you can see how it plays. Now for some off-meta compositions. For my Overload gamers out there, rely on Yae's totems for maximum electro application. First is basically unnecessary for Overload Yae. You pair Yae with the standard Pyro DPS for Overload compositions. Support of Yae for Eula. She plays nearly identical role to Fischl or Beidou for electro application here for Superconduct and Turret sub DPS. And on that topic, supportive or sub DPS Yae can fit on nearly any composition that involves Beidou or Fischl. These two electro supports are common off-field DPS, and Yae fits the bill with her totems being completely off-field DPS. So generally, I'd say that she's pretty flexible with the compositions that she can slot into. For maximum value, she's going to prefer the 3 synergistic 5-stars that I mentioned earlier. Combining all 3 makes this golden composition. Yae Miko, Raiden Shogun, Kokomi, and Kazuha, all 5-star units. Alright, let's showcase 2 compositions for Yae in Abyss Floor 12. First up, the comp I just mentioned, Yae plus Raiden plus Kokomi plus Kazuha. Infinite rotation electro charge composition. I will be heavily nerfing my Raiden Shogun, who is Constellation 6, by using a level 1 1-star weapon. So then these are her stats and her attack is completely shafted. Yae will be running the R5 Witsith at level 80, and these are her stats. Alright, cue the music, Mr. Cope. Next up, the F2P friendly composition with no dedicated healer besides Xingqiu. Yae plus Xingqiu plus Fischl plus Sucrose comp. Yae will be running the same stats with the Witsith weapon. And with the showcase complete, that about wraps up the core of this guide. With the strength of her kit resting on her Seishio Sakura totems, Yae excels at providing highly consistent DPS while on or off field. If this guide helped you understand Yae Miko a little better, don't forget to like and subscribe. It's free and really helps the video get recommended and reach a broader audience. Thanks for watching, and I wish that everyone still trying to wish for Yae Miko the best of luck. We'll see you on the next one. Take care.